Welcome into another edition of SEC Football and Beyond. I'm Neil McCready. Chris Landry with me here today as well. It's December the 22nd. This is our final show before Christmas. We will not have a show later this week, so happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. If you're traveling, hope you are safe, and hope you enjoy a wonderful holiday with your family and friends. Chris, how are you?
Neil, I am doing well. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you and your family and to all of our listeners out there. As you mentioned, be a little busy week. Be busy with bowl games this week. Getting to know a lot of folks with family issues. I know that I will be updating a lot of stuff on LandryFootball.com and doing some other post and podcast stuff. But you're right. This is we'll reconvene next week to talk about a lot of stuff. But anything that happens, fear not, between now and next Tuesday, check out LandryFootball.com, Rebel Grove, and we'll have all the latest tons to get to today. I know we got the playoff situation. We've got bowl games and certainly the drama at Auburn, at LSU, at Tennessee. Lot to get to. So let's get to it. Wherever you want to go, wherever you want to start.
Let's start with Auburn because it's really interesting. The last time we talked, it was, I guess, Thursday, and there were some different names that were flying around, but it all signs pointed towards Kevin Steele, and all signs might still point towards Kevin Steele, but it's only in a very roundabout way. I'm a little more sourced on this than I even wanted to be, quite frankly, because I had to dig a little bit into the Lane Kiffin to Auburn rumors that percolated some on Sunday and to some degree on Monday even. I'll first tell you, I don't think Lane Kiffin is Auburn's next coach. I don't think that's who Auburn wants, and I don't think it's a job that Lane necessarily wants unless they gave him Nick Saban money and Nick Saban control, which is not going to happen, and which leads into where I'm going with this. There's a very clear power struggle that's happening at Auburn, and the power people are trying to make this hire now, whether it's Billy Napier or Bill Clark or whoever. And part of the deal is you don't get control over your coaching staff necessarily. You've got to keep Kevin Steele, who's got a $5 million buyout of his own. So again, this is Auburn. They're essentially paying out 21 point some odd $1 million for Gus Malzahn. No offset. That money's guaranteed. If you don't keep Kevin Steele, you've got to pay him another $5 million not to coach. Then you've got to pay a buyout on whatever coach you get. There's a lot there. And at this point, it certainly looks like they've been turned down by a lot of people. Steve Sarkisian was supposed to interview on Sunday. It's my understanding that didn't happen. It's my understanding the job was offered to Billy Napier, who said no. There's a really fascinating rumor that's flying around a little bit right now that involves both Sarkisian and Napier. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it's kind of out there floating around. And then the one that really tells you if it's true, and maybe you can fill me in here, if this one's true, then there's dysfunction, and we're at the circus clown portion of the search. If Bill Clark, the UAB coach, who's highly thought of in the business, but doesn't have any real major SEC experience, if Bill Clark, the UAB coach, was offered the Auburn job and ultimately turned it down, something much deeper is going on at Auburn than what we see on the surface.
Well, I've talked about this and I've gone over it, and for those who didn't listen last week in the two shows, what I've said about this whole process has come to bear, and that we call it in the coaching search business sham interviews. This is, first of all, and it's semantics. Okay, folks, let me explain this. No one turned down, no job was offered by Auburn to Billy Napier. I mean, I talked to Billy myself, and I talked to Jimmy Sexton, his agent. The issue is that it never gets to that point. Okay, so the point was, it was pretty obvious in the conversation this was a sham interview, meaning there's not a real job there that you want. There's conditions associated with it, and it's more than just this assistant and that assistant and those things. So it's one of those things where if you're a Billy Napier, you got to pull your name out of it, because you can't say, Well, he re-upped at Louisiana Lafayette because that happened a week ago or 2 weeks ago with the South Carolina deal. He was never offered that job either. They wanted Shane Beamer. The Auburn situation, as I've explained last week, it's not what people think or understand. It is dysfunction, Neil. It has been. It's certain people that want their things a certain way. And so they clearly want a certain guy in that position, and they've gotten a whole lot of backlash on having that. It's almost Greg Schiano, Tennessee, like, we're not going to stand for you ramrodding your guy there. And so they're having a lot of sham interviews. So when they make a quote-unquote conversation, well, Billy Napier's agent's Jimmy Sexton. Steve Sarkisian's – so Jimmy – no, he doesn't even let Sark even bother dealing with that. He gets a raise and all that. There's not a true job there as you would normally think for Auburn. They are making – yeah.
Napier did not used to be represented by Saban. That's like about a year old, right? He switched a year ago or so.
Sexton, yeah. All the guys that have been around, Saban, they've all kind of gravitated towards Sexton. That's correct. Bill Clark is not represented by him. Again, now this is a different situation. Bill Clark, pretty clear in that process. This is not a real job there. So you take your name out. So there's this. The people can take it the way they want. It is not inaccurate to say those guys turned it down. But what they did, they didn't turn down an offer. They turned down an opportunity to continue to have conversations because they knew it was real. We call that. And it's happened a lot. Unfortunately, in the NFL, you have a lot of that. Well, we got to interview a minority, so let's just interview this guy. And a lot of these guys feel like they're just a token interview. But this is what's happening now. And so, it's, you want to call it game playing. It's to create a scenario, whatever, that, hey, we talked to all these guys, and I said this last week. Yeah, you're going to hear all those names. It's not new names to hear, that Billy Napier and Bill Clark and this and that. To hear all those names, well, we couldn't get them. We looked at. Now, the only thing that I think has really been a big story that's, to me, this stuff has been the same way I've felt it all along. It's not information. It's just firsthand knowledge of what Auburn does and how they do it. Is there going to be enough of a backlash, Neil, with the you're not going to hire Kevin Steele issue? Because if that is the case, then you got a full-on war, because to this point, look, if Bill Clark was truly offered this job, an Auburn job, with the Auburn money, with the full control, and we're not going to interfere, Bill Clark's not turning it down. Billy Napier's not turning it down. Hugh Freeze is not turning. None of those guys are turning it down. Sark might not want it. Okay, I don't know. They never got to that point. The point is, it's fine and it's fun, and look, it's all fair and love and war and coaching searches to poke fun. They're getting turned down left and right. Well, yeah, they are, but not really. Well, they're basically trying to say, I don't want. We don't want to have a situation where they don't want one of those guys to take it. They want the perception that they're doing a search, and then they're going to try to ramrod their guy. Whether they're going to be able to do it or not, that's what's going to be interesting, Neil, because I felt all along that's their plan. I don't know how their plans are going to turn out, but I felt all along that's their plan. Nothing surprised me on this. I talked about it 2 times last week. I'm not forecasting anything. It's so obvious on how Auburn does things. This is not a surprise.
Well, there's a slow drip here, right? Because what you have is you have a situation where the fans fought back. Social media, people can say
correct.
People can say what you want about social media, and it's often a terrible thing, but sometimes it does allow the voiceless to have a voice. So they expressed their opinion, and they expressed it strong, and they did it with the way to make it trending by putting a hashtag on it and all that stuff, Stop Steele and all that. And so what it feels like to me is, at this point, what the Auburn power brokers are doing is, if we drag this out long enough, and
there you go.
It's a dead period right now. You can't contact recruits. Kids are already signed. You can't sign the next kids until the first Wednesday in February, and the dead period extends through the holiday. So you've got some time. Auburn's got a bowl game down in the Citrus Bowl. I can't remember who they play. I don't know that it matters. Auburn's in a bowl game, so Kevin
Northwestern, but that's okay.
Northwestern. Kevin Steele's going to get to coach the bowl game. So if you drag it out long enough, fans begin to get desperate enough to go, hey, okay, maybe what we need to do is just hire Kevin Steele. Let's just do it because we got to have a coach. We got to have a coach. We got to have a coach. And it kind of feels like that's where this is going.
You got it, man.
Because fans do this thing, and this is not me criticizing fans. I love you guys, but fans do this thing where they go, hey, you know what? I'm a little worried because my coach at school X, he might be the guy that they go after. They might just back up a truck and offer him all the money. But it's not always just about the money. It's listen, here's the things. People go, why is Billy Napier being so selective? Okay, well, let's talk about Billy Napier for a minute. Billy Napier has the preeminent program in the Sun Belt right now. They're winning. He's got a good roster. He's got a great reputation. He's not going away. He can bet on himself for another year. He's not having a hard time putting food on the table for his family in Lafayette, Louisiana. He's got time. Billy's got time. So he doesn't have to take a job unless it's the right job. And look, Auburn's a great job, but Auburn's not a great job if the people at Auburn are controlling you and trying to turn you into a puppet.
It's correct.
Because at the end of the day, and we talk about this all the time, football is a scoreboard business. And so at the end of the day, when you play Florida or Georgia or Alabama or Ole Miss or LSU or whoever you play, Clemson, whoever you play, when your team, in this case Auburn, has fewer points than the other team that you're playing when the clock hits zeros, well, the boosters don't get blamed for that. You do. You're the one that takes the heat. You're the one that gets the reputation for losing, not the boosters. Jimmy Rain doesn't get a loss. You do. So that's where this is headed. And I just think so. The whole did he turn it down? Did he not turn it down? Like you said, is semantics really. But there's a little bit of the way that the deal works is, hey, Jenny passes a note to Jimmy, letting Jimmy know that Sarah would like to be Jimmy's girlfriend, but only on the following conditions. And so you start laying the conditions out, and at some point Jimmy goes, I'm not very comfortable with condition number 3 there. And Sarah says, well, then I don't want to be your girlfriend anymore. And so did anybody get turned down? Not really, but kind of sort of. If Billy Napier, if Auburn wanted Billy Napier, it could get Billy Napier, but it can't.
And so could South Carolina.
And so could but
so like Blake says, Billy Napier hasn't turned down anybody, folks. Okay, and this is the semantics. South Carolina, and I know because I talked with Billy. He wanted the South Carolina job. He was crushed. You may not disagree with South Carolina's selection. I personally think Billy is a little bit more proven than Shane Beamer, but that's who South Carolina wanted. But folks, nobody ever gets turned down for a job, and nobody turns down a job because it doesn't work that way. No, you don't ever offer a job to anybody. There've been some snafus there. Okay, I won't say never. For the most part, you never offer the job to anybody unless you know they're going to take it. And you don't ever, you take your name out of it. And that is a common courtesy too. You kind of let people take their name out of it. Again, Billy Napier. I mean, I talked to Billy the Saturday he was having the second interview with South Carolina. He immediately re-upped with ULL. Well, if he really wanted to stay with ULL and that's what he wanted to do, he would have done that. Well, he didn't like what they said at South Carolina. Well, perhaps, yeah, you don't like it because this is what they're going to do. I do think Shane Beamer costing less and giving more to the assistants was a factor, but they thought, right or wrong at South Carolina, that Shane Beamer and Billy Napier were close, maybe closer than I think, and Shane was cheaper, and Shane was the guy that a lot of their big booster base wanted. So that's what happened. Not Billy, would you be our head coach? We're going to offer you this. No, thank you. I'm staying at ULL. It's not the way it happens. It's not the way it happened there. This situation is that never even got to money. This was a sham. Just like I said, we call it a sham interview in the business. So it's a conversation you can say accurately that you discussed with the guy. That was not even close to an offer, to the point where you clearly realize in Billy's case, I got to take your name out of it. Well, he takes his name out of it because, again, he can't announce that he's got a new deal at ULL. He just got one. So I'm taking my name out. Well, take your name out of it because there's not a real job there that seriously they're offering. None of that took place. And that is the problem there. Everyone wants to make it like, oh, Auburn's getting turned down left and right. No, they're getting turned down, as Neil said, for the job that they're offering is not the job. As Neil hit it on the head. It's bingo. I wish more reporters were like that. I get this call, and somebody said, I don't want to call him out because he may be a friend of yours. This is a nationally known reporter.
Call him out. I want to hear it.
But I don't want to be rude. I'll tell you off the air.
Okay.
I think that's, I don't want to. There's a guy that said, what is Auburn? Won't they just go and hire Lane Kiffin now? These people are clueless. They don't understand. And this is a guy who acknowledges that he's got family that went to Auburn. I'm like, oh my God, how dumb can you be to not realize the job that they are presenting to these candidates is not attractive. So on the outside, everyone thinks, wow, Auburn, great SEC job. And if you're an Auburn fan, you understand how great it is. That's not the job that's being presented. The job of, we're going to pay you well. You're going to have control to build your whole system, do what you want. That's not what they're offering. So the job is only as good, folks, with the people that you're with. That's why I always say, people will say things like, well, Dabo will never leave Clemson. Probably not, as long as, he doesn't get sideways with an administrator and things go bad. The job is only as good as the people that you're around. And on the outside, folks, you don't know all these people behind the scenes. So you see it as, well, Alabama, Florida, Auburn, Ohio State. These are great jobs. You know why Urban Meyer's not at Ohio State anymore? Well, illness is a big part of it, but he wanted to get out of it because that went sideways with the whole suspension issue with the president. So boom, done, over. Probably would have stayed another year. Those things are not understood as much. It is fine to call out Auburn, but educate yourself on what's going on. Auburn knows what they're doing. What they're doing may be dumb, but they're not flying by the seat of their pants trying to, they didn't have a plan when they fired Gus Malzahn. Yeah, they did. The plan was, we're going to fire Gus Malzahn and promote Kevin Steele. Yes. As Neil said last week, and Neil was on top of this more than I was. I was aware of it, but I'm not into the social media stuff as much. Neil's right. I think maybe the poster child for it was Tennessee and Greg Schiano. That upheaval has become very, very PR problematic for the Jimmy Raines of the world. So they gotta try to sell this. Neil just said it. He went down and said it, what I said kind of last week. We're going through that process to where the Auburn fan is going to get worn down. Well, who are we going to hire? We just because they don't care if the perception is they've been turned down, the people that are making the decision. And by the way, I found out, and I said this too, Alan Green's not going to be at Auburn very long because part of that he is not happy about this. This is on this kind of, as you said, he's the one that's got the stain on him, and he don't have a damn thing to do with this. So and yet,
to do this,
he's what he's decided to do. I'm understanding that if you tie in the whole, what is it called, stop steal or whatever, he had a little bit to push behind the scenes for that. So the bottom line is, this is what's being done by the people that are doing the hiring. Well, it shouldn't be that powerful. Yeah, you're right. Well, maybe you're right. Well, when you write the checks, that's how it works there. All I've ever tried to do for 2-3 weeks is explain. Neil knows that he's covered it, but to the listeners out there, this is what Auburn's doing. Yet I keep hearing these folks. No. They know exactly what they're doing. They may be stupid in what they're doing. It may be so narcissistic. Look, it is the Jerry Jones situation. He'd rather lose if he can't win his way and get the credit. And this is what's happening. This is the quote unquote owners at Auburn that are at play. In other words, they don't want the best. They want the best guy they can get and still be in a controlling position, because if they can't have their fun and be in it, then it's not fun for them and they don't want it. And their money gives them the power. And that is the part of the issue that you don't know. I see somebody kind of exposing him. who was the guy that said it? But anyway, yeah. So I'm not trying to be, again, reporters.
Yesterday was my first day off in a long time. I didn't podcast. I probably worked, meaning talked to people about stuff. I probably worked for 15 minutes yesterday, maybe. It was great. I needed a break. I still need a break. I'm not spending my week on this story. I'm working on, there's an Ole Miss story that I'm working on right now, but I'm not putting a hell of a lot of work in it either. So, I'm not obsessed with it. I stayed off social media for the most part yesterday. And
to be honest with you, I'm not. Just so people know, I'm not a reporter. I'm not. I think it's disrespectful to the people that report, and certainly like Neil, they do that. My situation's a little different. I'm involved in coaching searches, so I'm not smart enough to know who to trust with secondhand information. I don't. I have to get it from the person, but also most of it is not, somebody tells me this, is that I kind of know what the thinking process is and what makes sense and what doesn't. And I can easily sniff out the BS from the reality. So, I get it. As we get into some of this other, so that's kind of, with this, there's just a lot of speculation. And again, I don't mean to demean Auburn, and I don't mean to take up for Auburn. I just mean to point out what goes on at Auburn. And every place has their politics. But I said this, Neil, didn't we talk about this several weeks ago, that, really since we first started this show, that there's politics, there's unique politics, there's some weird politics, and then there's Auburn. And Auburn is the most unique set of circumstances, and it's because
it's different.
It's because it's almost incestuous in the fact that you got a lot of people that are involved at Texas, but there are a lot of them. So there are a lot of people that, and that's why they have a hard time getting on the same page, and they got too many leaks. At Auburn, when there are leaks, when you read about this leaks, I sit there and listen to the reporters, and I know exactly who's feeding that information to them. And so, and I get that. They're feeding it. They're trying to paint it because they want to get what they want. And they, meaning not Auburn, the booster factions at Auburn. And I do think, and you said this before, there's not everybody that thinks that Kevin Steele is – there are other boosters there that don't feel that Kevin is the right guy, but there's nobody that they universally agree on. And so, Neil, you hit it. What I said, that's it. They're going to let this play out. That's why I said, they'll put that committee together, and they'll do all these things that will give you the smoke signals, and then they can turn around and justify. And maybe their hope is to wear down the fans that say, stop Steele, stop Steele. Maybe some of those will say, we got no other option. What do we do? You know what? Kevin Steele may be a better fit. And it may not, maybe that's where we ought to go. We couldn't even get Bill Clark. Well, you could get Bill Clark if you presented the job the right way. You could get a lot of guys, but you can't the way you're doing it. Ding, 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 ding. Wake up, folks. If it doesn't make sense, then think about it. And again, just trying to give some insight into how some of this politics works when dealing with some of these people, and some of these people are a pain. And look, when you have one guy that represents a lot of these contacts, all these trickle downs of who's candidates and who's got candidate, Jimmy Sexton, Lane Kiffin, Sark, Napier, I mean, you just go down the line and there's all these connections. Well, Jimmy, as you said, will use all of this to get more money and get raises for every one of his guys. Jimmy Sexton, who represents Sark, will get him a raise on the staff of a guy, Nick Saban, that Jimmy Sexton represents. That stuff works because, you can justify it more then. And so, anyway.
So if I told you it wasn't Kevin Steele, and for the record, I think at the end of the day, it will be Kevin Steele. But if I told you that it wasn't Kevin Steele, who would you tell me that it was?
Hey, I have no clue, because I have never thought that it was anybody other than Kevin Steele. So let's say that it becomes toxic. Let's say there is the Stop Steele bandwagon gets Shiano, Tennessee-like, and they're like storming the plains with their pitchforks, and I don't know where they go then. Because, again, they've exhausted a lot of things. I've said this before. I told you last week, if this job was presented right, they could get a Tom Allen. They could get a lot of guys. They're not getting any of those guys in the current situation. So what has to change?
Hold on, let me interrupt you, because I think there is one person who would take it on the terms that were kind of presented, if you will.
Well, I'm sure there's some. I just don't know.
I'll give you one. Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze would absolutely retain Kevin Steele.
You know what? He probably would, and he probably would. But I don't get the sense that they're interested in Hugh Freeze in any way, shape, or form. Now, maybe that changes. I don't know. I mean, the people that I'm talking about have to change. So I can't tell you that. Who it would be and what you would do. I don't know. I don't know at this point. I would say this, that presented correctly with a normal process, which again is anything but normal, I think any of those guys would be very interested. Yeah, you can win with Chet King. But look, I think that Kevin Steele will win to some degree. Look, there are a lot of coaches that win. That is an indication of how good the job is. But if you have a good job, you have a good options, and you are not offered the job, let me stress that you're not offered the job. It never gets to that point. You talk, and nothing ever comes to where they're even, it's like you have to get offered the job. You can't take a job that they don't offer. They haven't offered it. It hadn't even come close to offering the job to anybody. That's the point.
Yeah.
So it has to get to the point where I do agree. I think there are a number of guys. There are a number of assistants that are good. But again, are those going to be as appealing to that fan base as Kevin Steele at that point? Probably not. There it goes. That's where it is. That's the whole point. That's the whole process. That's what I talked about last week. So I don't know. I don't have – it's not like, oh, well, this is what we're going to do, Chris. If somebody tells me what they're going to do, I sure as hell ain't going to believe it, because nobody's going to tell me that. I mean, I'm but I think what's going to happen is they're either going to get what they want, or it becomes so toxic that they're going to have to go in a different direction. And, Neil, I don't have that answer of who that's going to be.
Yeah, I don't either. I think it's going to be Kevin Steele. I think that's where they're headed, and how it gets responded to. I think you're right about Alan Green. He's
dead man walking over there, because he's pissed off Jimmy Sexton, and Jimmy Sexton's it's made him look bad, and he's going to be the fall guy on that. People will probably blame him, and that's not fair. I don't think Alan Green's a good fit there, but this ain't on him. He ain't calling these shots, folks. He's not in any way calling it. Money talks. That's what's happened here for so long.
So let me ask you about a rumor that's flying around in the coaching circles.
Okay.
The rumor is one of the reasons that Steve Sarkisian and Billy Napier and others are being incredibly selective. Mario Cristobal got a new deal at Oregon. That the rumor is that if Alabama wins the national championship here in a few weeks, that Nick Saban's going to retire. Nick Saban's 69 years old. For the record, I don't believe this rumor, but it's flying around in coaching circles some, that this is kind of getting out a little bit, and that the Alabama job, which would be the preeminent job in college football today, Nick Saban has quite obviously done an amazing job of building a program, building a roster, building a system, building everything you can build. It is really the Michelangelo of the history of college football, quite frankly. I never thought that anybody, Chris, could come to Alabama and diminish Bear Bryant. I didn't think that was humanly possible, and yet Nick Saban has done it. Do you put any stock at all into Nick Saban winning a title and saying, hey, I've done all that one can do, and I'm walking away at the top?
Look, I mean, I think that it kind of reminds me, and I know it didn't end well for Joe Paterno. And I remember a story, and I always refer to this. Joe Paterno's hanging it up, man. It's going to be 4 years. And I had a talk one time with Todd Blackledge. He does TV now, but he was quarterback at Penn State in 1982. Yeah. He said when he was recruited in the early 80s, they said, you don't want to go there, because Todd was from Ohio. He says, you don't want to go there. Ohio State and other states said, you don't want to go there. Paterno's not going to be there your 4 years. Paterno was there to where Todd's kids, maybe grandkids. I mean, look, it's hey, to sit there and say a 69-year-old coach is going to be coaching at 79. I mean, no one's ever done that. And we don't know what tomorrow brings. And we don't know what tomorrow brings for any of us. But when you're older, I think that people understand this, there's more of a chance that stuff can happen. Now, I've said this before, and I've told people this. I'm a little younger than Nick. I've known him a long time. But, I don't mean this to poor mouth or anything, but, Nick is healthier than I am. I got a bad heart, had a mechanical valve put in a few years ago. I've had a bout with thyroid cancer. I've had issues. I'm not as healthy. I couldn't do some things physically. Nick is a healthier 69 than I am. That's important. But we don't know what tomorrow brings in terms of health. I think Nick is so laser focused on I do think he's going to be miserable if he doesn't find something to do. Now, he can find something to do, and I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know if that's a right type of role, like he could be almost like a Peyton Manning, to where he can do his own type of football shows on a platform that or if he wants to be part of game day and basically rewrite how that he could have the power to do that. I don't know if that would appease him short term, long term. I don't know. I don't know if he would be happy or be satisfied. I don't think he would be, because we've talked about it. Maybe being a role where he's more of an overseer of an NFL operation, to where personnel and things. I don't know that'd be quite enough. And, I put him with Coughlin and some of the Coughlin's role that he did. It just, I don't know, so I don't know what else he would do that would satisfy him as much as coaching football. So as long as he's healthy, I think he's staying. I don't think he looks at it as, because if he wins, it'll be 7. He will tie Bear at Alabama, and it will pass him for overall titles more than anybody. I'm not going to sit here, and don't let anybody BS you to say that doesn't matter to him. Of course it does.
Sure.
But it's going to fuel him to say, got it, beat the Bear. See you guys tomorrow. I'm going to the lake with Miss Terry. Boy, that would be like 2 weeks of golf, and he'd be freaking miserable. So I think it's done when he can no longer have the stamina to do it. And it's going to happen. It happens to all of us. I mean, I don't know when that's going to be.
Well,
I would be surprised
wait,
if he
hold
steps away.
Are you saying right here on the show, on this show, on the record, that Nick Saban, who has beaten everyone and everything, are you saying that he's not going to ultimately be able to defeat Father Time? I mean, are you willing?
I'm willing to say that at some point, it's going to happen. I don't know. I don't know, folks, if it's one more year, 2 more years. Would it shock me if he walked away? I'd go short of saying shock, but
Sure.
but pretty much almost shocking. Look, but I think to go beyond the year to year at this point, I don't. Beyond that, I think it's difficult to sit there and say 5 years. Who the hell knows in 5 years what he's going to feel like or what's going to happen or anything? You could be perfectly healthy and something happens to you and it just changes it. Or I'll say this. I hate to talk like this, but what if something happens to Miss Terry? What if Miss Terry gets, now, God forbid something happens to Terry? You talk about somebody that relies on her for a lot of stuff. I mean, life stuff, Terry handles everything. Now, could they put somebody in that place? Yes, but emotionally, I think that would have a devastating effect on Nick that, would cause his focus level to be, as you might expect, it'd be devastating for him. But we can't forecast that. I don't sense or feel anything that if he wins this year, he's stepping aside. I haven't heard that. I haven't felt that. Listen, the coaching profession, I think a lot of them would kind of like that, but
sure,
give somebody else a chance.
Oh, and the people that were telling me this, they first of all said, "Hey, this is kind of rumor mill stuff," but they weren't saying, "Hey, they weren't doing it like, hey, put this out." It was just more like, "Hey, this is kind of," because I was asking, because I was asking around about the Auburn.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
it makes sense in a normal standpoint. Hey, step aside. Perfect time to do it, right?
I mean, obviously, Steve Sarkisian. If
yes.
if Steve Sarkisian is told you can have any job you want, he would say, "Okay, well, one of the things that I'd want to know first, if I'm Steve Sarkisian and I've restored my image and my reputation, and one of the first things I'd want to know is, okay, well, before I take the Tennessee job, before I take another job, what's going on here? Because this is the best job in the country, and Nick's going to leave that the best job in the country. And whoever gets that job is walking into the best job in the country. Now, the challenge will be on them to keep it as the best job in the country. But on day one, he will have the best job in the country. Now, he'll have an incredible task in front of him, living up to Nick Saban. But regardless, so that's my point, is that you look around and some people are trying to, I think, a little bit what's happening, Chris, is some people are trying to explain and justify what's happening at Auburn by going, well, maybe Sarkisian didn't want it. Maybe Napier didn't want it because they're hearing some rumblings about something imminent at Alabama. Because obviously, if Alabama opened today, let's just say, and for the record, I don't think either of us really believe this, but let's just say Alabama wins the national championship and Nick Saban says, I've done all I can do. And he says, I'm going to go do something else, whatever that something else is. Two of the very first names at the top of the Alabama hot board would be Steve Sarkisian and Billy Napier.
Yeah, I don't know how high Billy would be personally on the list. And let me just say this again. Billy hasn't turned down South Carolina or Auburn, and he's not waiting for the LSU job or the Alabama job. I think he wants a good SEC job. I think the South Carolina was as close to a dream job for him as possible, and it didn't work out. So I think that Sark is going to have a great chance to get that job. Okay. In January or next year or 2 years, because the offense will be successful. And I'm going to tell you, he will have a better chance, because the same thing has been said by other people about Mario Cristobal. Well, Sark is going to have the heads up over a better chance over Napier or Cristobal, because he's there. He's unusual. He's coached some in the NFL, and he's been a head coach twice. And look, He had personal issues that apparently he's gotten taken care of. And again, that would need to be if something happens there or whatever, if they feel the pressure of being a head coach at Alabama would lead you to drink, which that job could probably leave a sober person to drink. That is something that would be, other than that, he would have the best shot. But let me just say this, is that was the same thing for Kirby Smart too. That was Kirby was in great position to get that job. Nick just outlived him in that it's kind of like the Tom Brady and all those backup quarterbacks. They all were going to be the guy to replace Brady, except Brady's still playing at 43, 44, and now 45 at another place. But I think obviously now you're in a better position to replace Nick if you're Sark than you were Kirby, because, 4 years ago, Nick was, further away from stepping down than he is now. We know that Nick is on the back nine of his coaching career at Alabama. I just don't know if it's what hole he's on. But Sark is in a great position. He is the odds-on favorite to get that job as we speak, unless something were to change that. And none of those other guys, Kirby's not leaving Georgia to come back, and that's right. Obviously, there would be some people, if he had a lot of success, there'd be some people that would really be pushing for Lane Kiffin, but there's some people that absolutely would not want Lane Kiffin. So that would be interesting. So, but Sark absolutely is the clear front runner. They don't even need to say, Sark, stay here. This is not one of those Will Muschamp at Texas situations. This is one of those cases where Sark's in good position to get this job if Nick leaves at a time where, I mean, it's possible.
Let's get to some other stories that are.
Let's do it.
We got to speed up on some of these topics a little bit. Tennessee, as of this moment, Jeremy Pruitt is still the head coach. They've backed out of the bowl game. I'm not going to say that they used COVID as an excuse. I don't know that, but they're not playing in the bowl game. Army is filling in for Tennessee in the Liberty Bowl. What do you anticipate happening with Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee?
Well, I don't know what's going to come out of this situation. A lot of people have speculated that if something is unearthed, that gives Tennessee the option, if they want to, quote unquote, fire him with cause. That's always something that is, I guess, a possibility. I don't think there is anything that's being planned on it. I mean, even the comments publicly, I think, were done strategically by Philip Fulmer before the cancellation of the game, and I'm glad that Army was able to get in and replace Tennessee, by the way. But I think before the cancellation, Phil Fulmer said, well, it's a great opportunity to play in a bowl game, get practices to get, I think he stopped short of saying this, but in essence of kind of get a head start to, next year type. I don't think there's any plans to make a move on that. Look, if you were going to do that, you would be doing that. You would be hearing it. I don't think that's going to happen. And now, that's provided that nothing is unearthed. If something's unearthed, then they've got justification to dump him and then, hey, save all that money. So I know it's on the fence, but I can't answer what happened or didn't happen in the recruiting violations and who was responsible and so on and so forth. So that's how I read that.
LSU beats Ole Miss on Saturday. They finished 5-5. There's no bowl game because of the NCAA deal, the self-imposed deal that's going on there at LSU. Bo Pelini let go yesterday. I believe Scott Linehan let go as well. There's been more opt-outs. LSU finishes on a winning streak. I think they beat Arkansas, Florida, and Ole Miss to finish the season. That being said, boy, it still appears to be somewhat chaotic down there.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is kind of frustrating because I know Ed real well. I know Bo. I mean, I talk. Look, this was just like, and I failed twice here in this because just like when they hired Matt Canada, I mean, the personality fit was not going to work, and it didn't. And this whole thing, I mean, Ed wanted Bo, and I'm like, and it was pushed. There was somebody in the administration that had been around Bo and liked Bo. And again, these people get so clueless. You got to understand, Bo Pelini and Ed Orgeron, they're a personality clash. Okay, so that was never going to work in my mind. it's more than just that the defense collapsed. That's why the defense collapsed, because you've got an ultra ego personality that are high strung. Dave Aranda could deal with that, go in, coordinate his defense, and make Ed feel like, well, Bo's going to, pardon the pun, bow up. And this was a disaster waiting to happen. This is not about just, again, the fundamental disaster and the collapse of the defense. This is why the defense collapsed. So this is a part of it. Look, it's one thing to not have a spring. No one did. To not have all the practices. No one did. To have an inordinate amount of players leave for the draft. Not many have ever had quite to this degree in coaching changes. You got a lot of things to work on. This was not a defense that struggled and with another year fix. This was a personality flaw and a problem that was going to have a hard time. It would have gotten better next year on the field, but it would have, just from a repetition standpoint, but it would have been a personality clash that would have just killed this, eventually. Now, look, the catastrophic, failure of this defense is what got it. There's justification for a drop. The collapse to be 124 out of 127 on defense, to be completely inept, to really not get a whole lot better relative only to the teams you're playing. Those are things that were unacceptable. Bill Johnson is going to retire. Expected D-line coach, not much of a recruiter. He took over, obviously, in a spot where they lost their previous defensive line coach, ironically, to a very freak injury prior to the season. Then Billy Bush, the safeties coach, is gone. Corey Raymond's the only defensive guy left there. Scott Linehan, you're correct, is going to be gone, not going to return. Bo's going to get a one lump sum buyout, which is going to be less than the total number. So the total number that you're reading is not accurate, because the total number that he was due is over time, and he's going to take the one lump sum, and it eliminates any offset. He can go and do what he wants to do. So Scott Woodard has put out that Orgeron's going to have to replace Pelini within the budget that includes Pelini's buyout. That's basically a statement that's kind of crying out for some booster help. LSU doesn't have big time check writers for boosters. They got to raise money, $200,000 here, $200,000 there.
Yeah.
So I don't think that this is, if the right guy is there, they'd come up with the money, but it's going to have to come up with outside resources. And basically he's told Ed, you got 1 year to fix this. And meaning, it can't be a disaster situation again. So that's the situation. I'm going to go into it more detail, with a lot more detail than we have time for here on a post. Hopefully I'll get to it today over at LSU. Lots of changes. And we kind of expected it, but the frustrating thing for me is, it was like beating my head against the wall dealing with Les. Ed listens, but Ed may listen too much, actually, but to not get him to understand that Matt Canada and Bo Pelini were personality clashes that weren't going to work is it's something I regret, because obviously I have no authority, but you would hope that maybe I could do a better job. So I kind of feel a little personal that just hadn't worked very well. And the personality fits are a big part, as you know, of coaching staffs. It's
sure.
Disaster.
The SEC championship game was quite entertaining, Chris. Florida, to its credit, just gave Alabama all that Alabama wanted. Florida played as hard as Florida could play. I thought Kyle Trask was really terrific, given all that he was asked to do. Did the game surprise you that it was as competitive as it was?
It was. I got to give Florida a lot of credit. I thought the third quarter was outstanding. I thought they would get a really good performance out of Florida. I thought they did some really good things. They found a way to make a couple of plays on defense here. There, Florida's just not very good defensively, and they're limited there. But offensively, being able to, in some cases, outpace, to the line of scrimmage, Alabama, get them misaligned. Alabama does a good job of adjusting. and Alabama did after a quick start. But then, as I always said, Dan Mullen, maybe a little bit quirky, maybe a little bit, from a head coaching standpoint, not as polished. Boy, he's really good at in-game adjustments and did a great job in the third quarter, and they've got talent. The quarterback played well. The tight end is a difference maker and a mismatch nightmare, and they did a phenomenal job. And what I did think would happen, and I mentioned it, is that Alabama would be able to win this game with the run game. And they did. I thought the real MVP was the offensive line play. Tough loss losing Landon Dickerson, but Najee Harris. I thought that was the key, being able to kind of finish the game off. That Alabama has the finishers. They've got the ability, the closer. They've got the Mariano Rivera, ability to do that with the run game more so than a team like Florida. But Florida did what they needed to do to make this a game. They did a very good job and made this close. I did not think going into the second half this game was going to be close. I thought this would be the separation, and actually it was a really good third quarter, and Alabama's adjustments and physicality running it was the difference.
Let's talk some bowls real quick in the last few minutes that we have. No surprise, the playoff came out exactly like you said it would. Alabama and Notre Dame in the I guess it's technically the Rose Bowl, but it's in Arlington, Texas. That was a decision that was predicated on COVID, obviously. Clemson and Ohio State will play in the other national semifinal. Both of these on New Year's Day. That game will be in New Orleans there at the Superdome. And then the other SEC games, SEC bowl games, there's one coming up on Saturday, so we can touch on it because it'll be the last time we visit between now and then. South Carolina and UAB play in the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. That game's in Tampa on Saturday at 11 a.m. Central. You can see it on ABC. Before we get into the other ones, I don't know how you get South Carolina kids motivated to go play in that game, but I mean, they can't be. I mean, and in fact, they have to be almost frustrated with it. They're going to lose their Christmas, being swabbed for COVID multiple times before they play in a game the day after Christmas in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, and for folks that know, none of these are real bowl games. Basically, what they are is they're road games at a neutral site. So they're road games for both teams. And as Neil said, they're going to be swabbed, and there's none of the typical get-togethers and banquets and stuff that you do, parades or whatever the heck, all these things. They just it's going to be in and out there real quick. The only thing you get out of is bowl practices, and South Carolina, it's not a good situation. Good opportunity for UAB. This will be quite the challenge because I just don't know what South Carolina's got to give. New coach. I do think it's an opportunity, and this is what bowl games have become now. Bowl games are no longer the end of the season. Bowl games are the first game of next year, if you look at it, unless you are playing in the playoffs. So it really is a game for the guys that are returning. And I think in this case, with a new coaching staff, I think you want to put good film out there. So if you're a young guy that's returning to South Carolina next year, you're not going to transfer, you're not leaving, you're not graduating. It's an opportunity to kind of show how important South Carolina football is to your new staff.
Other SEC affiliated bowl games, December the 30th. The Trans Perfect Music City Bowl in Nashville. It's Iowa versus Missouri. Missouri finished with a thud, getting absolutely stomped at Mississippi State. So they'll have their hands full with Iowa. I've watched Iowa a good bit this year. Iowa's got a chance to embarrass Missouri, Chris. The Goodyear Cotton Bowl, this will be an interesting game. Oklahoma versus Florida. That's on December the 30th at 7 Central in Arlington at AT&T Stadium. Then New Year's Eve, Tulsa versus Mississippi State in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl there in Fort Worth, Texas. That's at New Year's Eve at 11 a.m. Also on New Year's Eve, the Academy Sports and Outdoors Texas Bowl. Arkansas goes bowling at 3 and 7. They'll play TCU in Houston on New Year's Eve night. And then on New Year's Day, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Cincinnati faces Georgia. That game in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. on ESPN later that day. An hour later, the VRBO Citrus Bowl. I think it's Verbo. I've always said VRBO, but someone tells me it's Verbo. The Verbo Citrus Bowl. It's Northwestern versus Auburn. We referenced that earlier, that game in Orlando. The same time, the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, Kentucky and North Carolina State in Jacksonville, that game on ESPN. On January the 2nd, 2 SEC-affiliated games in the Outback Bowl at 11:30 a.m., 12:30 Eastern. It's Ole Miss versus Indiana at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. And that evening, it's the Capital One Orange Bowl. Texas A&M gets North Carolina at Miami Gardens, Florida at Hard Rock Stadium. That game on ESPN. Did any of those stick out to you as entertaining, and which ones of those stick out to you as mismatches?
First of all, the folks at Verbal, if you want to sponsor this fine program, I'll learn how to pronounce it correctly. We'll get that done.
No doubt.
But Florida, Oklahoma is really intriguing me. That's a good bowl game. That's two good teams. I was having to prepare virtually. I think they're better than Missouri, but they're going to have a hard time. They've kind of ceased the contacts. The preparation is going to be tough. I'm curious to see, Georgia, their effort against Cincinnati, and it's going to be, something to prove for Cincinnati is going to mean a lot for them. I am really intrigued by Indiana, Ole Miss. It's a good Indiana team. I think they're better than Ole Miss. But I don't, these bowl games are always intriguing. Boy, if you like, we break those down on LandryFootball.com. But man, I got to tell you, beware of who's going to be in and how this is going to play out. And man, if you're so addicted, you got to bet on these. God bless you, because this is really, really tough one bowl games to figure out. And A&M North Carolina, I'm curious. Look, it's one of those things you can be disappointed if you're A&M. We hadn't really talked about that. You got to go out and you got to take care of business against North Carolina. Don't sit there and, we didn't want to be there kind of. That's become the thing. Well, they didn't want to be there. That's let's go into the game with the built-in excuse we didn't want to be. You don't want to be in there, then you get embarrassed. So the SEC's matchups are really good. Of course, they always are with all the tight ends. They're in some of the better games. That's why I always remind folks that when they determine the four, some of the other matchups, they're done to lock in the money. Look at the SEC, the New Year's Six games. You got three teams: Georgia, Florida, A&M. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. That's the only ones that are making money.
Yeah, and I'll give some credit here. We've talked about it all year. The SEC, at the end of the day, if all of this holds, will have played 69 of their 71 scheduled games. And they will have fulfilled all but one bowl obligation. Yeah,
that's right. Well, that's right, because Vanderbilt just decided not to play. LSU not to play, and Tennessee, you're right, is the one that was in and now out. And let me say this too about the SEC. There's a lot of this. First of all, there's a lot of, and I know that the E&M, mantra is, we went through the gauntlet of the SEC. There's four good teams in the SEC. Okay, there's A&M, there's Alabama, of course, there's Florida and Georgia, and you can, to the degree of the other teams are above average to below average to some that are really bad, but there's still more of those quote unquote good teams than there are in other leagues. So they still have more of them. But boy, I love Jimbo, and it is politicking season, but we went through the gauntlet of Jimbo. You beat a good Florida team, and you got blown out by Alabama. And quite frankly, the resume against Notre Dame, anybody that sits here and argues the resumes, you can make an argument both ways. And sure. I don't think that
Jimbo's doing a job campaign.
Of course, every coach is. And I don't blame him. But people pick up on that. Oh, yeah, can you believe that? Yeah, I can believe it. It's, if you look at the resumes, Notre Dame's played as difficult schedule as any. I mean, or as we, whatever, however you want to phrase it, it's been pretty much the same. And I've said it all year long. Now, I would love to see Notre Dame and A&M play because I think they're just mirror images of one another. I think Notre Dame is a little bit more talented in certain areas. But I think that they're very, very close. So you can make a case for both. And if you're trying to make a case for A&M, you can make it. Trying to make one for Notre Dame, you can make it. If you're me and you don't really care to make a case for either one, you can see that they're flawed. And certainly just like the people that think that the system is flawed to have Ohio State in, I get it. It's a year where you got two teams that are deserving and you got a 4-team system. And anytime you have voting process in any way, you're going to be people that are ticked off about what you do, unless it just is a clean 4. And, we don't have that. This year, 2's fine. That's what it is.
We'll wrap it there. Got big got Santa Claus coming to town. Is he bringing you? Are you on the nice list or the naughty list?
I don't know. I kind of this time of year, just depending upon the naughty and nice, the coaching search stuff right now keeps me pretty busy, and I'd imagine it will. So I don't know. Sometimes I'm naughty, sometimes I'm nice on that. So I have to plead ignorance on that. It's a busy time of year with the end of the NFL season. We're going right into the bowl season, coaching search, just put recruiting to bed. We got to figure out what we're going to do with the offseason and draft preparation. And we've got coaching and GM changes in the NFL that are aplenty. So I will maybe we'll try to make a little gumbo and eat a little bit, but I'll be working the whole time. That's about it. So I want to wish you and your family,
thank you, very
Merry Christmas. It's such an honor to work with you a couple of days a week. A reminder, we're only doing it one day this week. But check out, I know Neil's got things covered. I will have a bunch of stuff still on LandryFootball.com, all the bowl previews, including today's that I'm getting ready to get up when we get done. And then all the news and notes around the coaching world. Anything changes, we'll have it for you. So check it out. Chris, as always, man, great to be with you. Wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Thank you guys for joining us in the comment room, the chat room. Really appreciate it, everybody. Great job. You're what we're doing it for, you and all the listeners. So thank you, and we appreciate all your support and contributions. We will be back on Tuesday. That's December the 29th with another edition of SEC Football and Beyond. Until then, Merry Christmas. Enjoy your family. Stay safe. Take care, and we will talk to you then.